Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you are here. You guys, before I jump into this week's show, I wanted to share that I was recently asked, how do I manage my time? Being a busy mom, wife, therapist, podcaster, chauffeur, cook, puppy wrangler. Actually, just kidding on that. Billy does most of the puppy wrangling. But here's my truth. I am very intentional in my time management. I take a look at all the things I want to get done and that need to get done and just prioritize as best as I can. I do love my shortcuts though, like my crock pot for batch cooking, getting up earlier than our girls and getting some work done. Most of the time that's emails, checking emails, setting some social media posts up. I also work out earlier in the morning because if I wait too long in the day, my workouts just don't happen. And I pretty much wear a uniform all the time. So I don't have to think about what I'll wear to work. And my uniform consists of a brand of clothing called Zaya Active, which I am in love with. It's activewear and athleisure styles. I love to wear the everywhere pants. They do not wrinkle. They're comfortable, travel great. You can sit on the couch and be comfy, move around. I wear the tank tops. My favorite is the parallel tank. And I usually throw on a cardigan or a sweater over it. I can dress it up or down. It's easily hands down the most comfortable clothes that I can wear to the office. And if you want to learn more, you can head over to my site, click on the activewear tab. That's lisamustard.com. Click on activewear. You guys, at the end of it all, I'm just looking for ways to make my life more efficient. And I hope that helps another busy person out there. Feel free to let me know what your tips are for time management. I'm always looking for ways to make things easier for me and my family. Okay, so let's talk about today's guest. Bridget Boursiquot is at LICSW in Massachusetts with over 12 years in the field. She has worked with a wide range of clients, including those experiencing depression, anxiety, self-esteem concerns, life-threatening illness, relationship issues within family, friendship, couples, etc., stress, parenting concerns, life stages and transition, trauma and abuse, loss, and infertility and pregnancy. Y'all, I think she has worked with everything out there. She has coached many individuals and couples through the processes of growth and has helped them to create a better life space for themselves. Her experience has allowed her to work across the U.S. as well as internationally and with a wide range of ages, backgrounds, and diagnoses, socioeconomic classes, and the barriers that come with each. Her counseling style is kind, interactive, and down to earth. And at her core, she believes in treating everyone with empathy, kindness, and compassion. And I think you guys will get a great sense of how she is in the therapy room just based on how she is on the show. She's incredible. Always wanting to be her own boss and design her schedule around her highest priority of family first, Bridget decided to open up a private practice. And she's the first to admit it's been a process, yet also so much fun. And her practice is 100% online. And on today's show, she shares tips on how to gain online clients, how she screens her clients to see if they're a fit for online counseling or life coaching, why she doesn't take insurance, and how to remain ethical when you're marketing your clinical counseling skills and life coaching services. We hope you enjoy this episode. Well, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Therapy Show. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard, and today's show I have a special guest. Her name is Bridget Boursiquot, and she is you're a licensed clinical social worker, correct?
Yes, licensed independent clinical social worker. Yep.
Sorry. In South Carolina, it's clinical, but in other states, I know it's independent. So Bridget is a LISW. She's a psychotherapist. She's also a life coach, and I'm really excited to have her on the show today. So welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So Bridget, as I get started with my interviews, I always love to ask the question, how did you decide to become a talk therapist?
Wow, that's a good question. I think it goes back to always being the person that everybody came to, right? All the way back to when I was a kid, I think. I always rooted for the underdog. I was always friends with the kid who sat alone at the table at lunch, or, always loved a good underdog story. So I think there was just always something in me that wanted to be there for other people. Mm-hmm. And as I kind of sought out that path, I thought it was being a doctor. I thought it was being a teacher. I thought it was being all these things. And kind of life took me on this path of being a social worker. And I found it really invigorating to help so much from the trenches, people call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like doing child protective work or kind of starting from what feels like the bottom up. And I realized that what really matters to me is the connection with all of these people, and the communication is where I find that connection. So it led me to talk therapy.
That's awesome. I love your story. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard a therapist say something similar. So I can tell you're one of us, Can definitely tell. So we were just kind of chatting before we hit record, and you were sharing your background with me. Can you talk about how you got to where you are today with what it is that you do?
Sure. Well, I've always worked in the field of social work. And so first I mean, since I was 18,
Mhm.
so 20 years, yikes. And I've done a lot with kids until I had my own. I wanted to step back from it. And I think that's kind of what guided me into private practice, into working with talk therapy. I knew I always kind of wanted to be in charge of my own situation here, of my own schedule. I'm somebody who likes that kind of control. And so I think knowing that this is where I was headed, but wanting to understand all of the avenues out there for support and help other people in a broader kind of spectrum, I had to kind of be in it on the way to get to where I am. So I've done a lot of work I've done, oh goodness, probably a little bit of everything. I've worked in schools.
Mhm.
I've worked in child protective. I've worked in urgent psychiatric care, in residential facilities. I've worked, in surrogacy. I've
Mhm.
worked in a law firm who supports these intended parents and who does egg donation and surrogacy. I've done a lot of different work in a lot of different areas. And all through it, I've done a lot of support.
Mhm.
And so I find that that kind of commonality ended up being in talk therapy. So what happened is I was working in a school setting doing therapy with kids and families, and found myself creating my own. And the more I spent time with my own kids, the more I wanted to.
Right.
And it had me taking a step back from the work I was doing. And then life moved us across the country. We were living in Arizona at the time. And I had my two oldest girls when we lived in Arizona. And then we came back, and I decided I wasn't done having kids, had a son, and decided I wanted to get back to work. And so while I was off on maternity leave, I continued my continuing education. I continued my licensure and decided I'm not going to go back and work for somebody else. I'm going to start a private practice. And so instead of jumping from another practice or another place, I just went for it. And I
Wow.
think it was scary sounding to a lot of people around me, and myself included, but it's been a process and it's been fun.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So when you went into private practice, did you have the typical four walls kind of office, or did you say I'm going to start and go straight into like telehealth virtual work?
No, I didn't ever have the four walls, and I always dreamt of the four walls. I
Yeah.
always pictured myself there. I actually went to a few places and talked to people and was like practically about to rent space and do the things. I
Mm.
thought you needed to have that first
Right.
before you could start the practice. And I realized I already had a practice. I already had all these people coming to me and talking to me, and I really just needed to kind of hang my own shingle, so to speak, and
Mhm.
call it a practice. I needed to name it and do it.
Right.
And so, no, I never did work in a private practice's office setting. You can't see me anywhere. I
Mhm.
do some in-person sessions, but it's more of let's meet here at this park while we feed the ducks, or let's go for a walk. I call it out of the box therapy, where
Nice.
we do something together because it incorporates self-care with
Mhm.
the therapy aspect itself.
Very cool. So all of your private practice is virtual or telehealth, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Most of my clients are video session. I
Mhm.
have a couple who, when they're needed or when they're not able to put themselves together, I do an audio session. But I prefer video, and whenever possible, I do try to meet people in person.
Very cool. And so tell me about what type of clients are best suited for you.
So that's been a tricky question that I've had to figure out myself. And I think I've had to do a lot more pre-screening than I ever thought I would have to do. And I think
Mhm.
that's because I'm very cautious about
Mhm.
who I work with.
Okay.
I think there's more of a push in social media right now, and I guess across the board, just for things like BetterHelp or Talkspace or those kind of virtual platforms, which I applaud. I think that they're kind of meeting the needs.
Mhm.
But I also think that ethics and value and even law hasn't caught up with those times yet. So I'm
Mhm.
a little bit harder on myself trying to figure out where I sit in all of that, even if the law or the ethics aren't there yet.
Right. I hear you. And I want to tell you, so here's a secret between you and me. Although as I say it, everybody hears it. So I worked for one of those online platforms for a while, and I think there's good and bad with it. But one of the things that always left this dreadful feeling in my stomach was I don't know if this person is suited for online therapy. And you and I being therapists, you and I kind of know who it would not be the best fit for. So I totally hear what you're saying about needing to screen more than you ever thought you would. I mean, I get that. So how do people find you? I mean, how do you market yourself that they find you to begin with?
Well, there's another secret
Shh.
is that I also have worked for one of these online platforms.
Okay.
And so I get it from that perspective. But I
Okay.
also had a lot of people that were looking for something that didn't want a subscription attached or had
Right.
that short term need. A lot of it has really been word of mouth. I've
Mm.
had a couple of clients who just wanted to talk. And so I've put a face and a name with that. And I've had all of these jobs that I mentioned before and
Mhm.
let those people know, hey, I'm doing this now if you have anybody. So it's kind of been filtered my way.
Mhm.
I put up something on a board at the colleges I went to. I think I went to local churches when people are looking to get married, and I do a lot of premarital counseling and couples work. So I think it's a lot of word of mouth. There's also a private practice nearby that does not offer web-based service. And so I
Mhm.
went to them and I said, hey, when somebody needs in-person service, I'll send them your way. When somebody needs web-based, send them my way. And so it's a lot of talking to people.
That's awesome. So it sounds as though you have really grown your network and your referral sources by getting out there and talking to people and letting them know what you're up to. That's really nice to hear because I think there's a lot of focus right now in the groups that I'm in on Facebook about you got to be on social media and this is how you get clients. And we tend to forget that we can use our warm network. We can use the people that we know that are just down the
Absolutely.
street, kind of think a little bit differently. I like how you suggest to talk with practices that may not be doing the telehealth and kind of like say to them, if I have someone who wants to be seen in person, I'll send them to you. And if you'll send me, I mean, that's great. That's really smart. I didn't think about that. I love that.
Yeah, it's been really helpful. And I've passed them a bunch of clients. Those ones that I feel like need to be screened out of my
Mm.
work, I can send to them and feel comforted by saying, I've met these people and I
Yeah.
think that they're good, and I want to
Yeah.
send them your way.
Yeah. When you say you screen, what are you screening for? Are you screening for your ideal client, like who is best fit to work with you and your expertise? Or, I'm hearing that. I'm guessing that's part of it, but I'm also hearing you're screening for is this client appropriate for like virtual or telehealth counseling? Is there anything else you're screening for?
Both of those
Yeah.
primarily.
Okay.
We do intake as therapists all the time, and
Mhm.
so there's that aspect of it.
Mhm.
But I think that there's also another layer that says, is your diagnosis going to need court letters? Are you going to ask for a support animal letter or
Right.
those kinds of aspects? Do you need a diagnosis? Do you need medication? Do you need all of those things where you might need a bigger support or a more in-person aspect to it?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the work that I do is more based on not necessarily a diagnosis, but what they're dealing with in the day to day. Maybe it's because of a diagnosis. Maybe somebody has anxiety, but what we're facing in the day to day becomes the focus of our work. So it's more whole body experience. When I relate it to the medical field, I often talk about a DO doctor versus an MD doctor.
Mhm.
Or, I don't want to say I'm like homeopathic, but I'm more of a whole body experience. How is this affecting your daily living and not
Right.
just your mental status?
Yeah, I like that. It sounds like you're focusing on not just treating symptoms, but getting to the root of what's causing the symptoms and how they're showing up in that person's day to day. We sounds like we operate on a very similar model in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of talk therapists would agree that that's how they see things as well. Awesome. Okay. So I know you told me that you work really well with folks who are dealing with anxiety, and you also work really well with couples. So, how did those two things become, or two issues, areas become your expertise?
I would say that they're probably the most prominent right now
Mm.
as far as web-based therapy, because when we think about life transition, whether that be I'm leaving college and starting a new job or moving somewhere, nobody stays put anymore. Everybody's transitioning all the time, whether that's a new job, a new career, a new relationship, whatever that looks like. There's a lot of anxiety that comes with that. And so if we're looking at a diagnostic aspect, yes, anxiety might be the treating factor.
Mhm.
But if we're looking whole body, it's a lot more like life transitions or change that people
Yeah.
are dealing with.
Yeah.
One of the biggest changes that people face is marriage.
Mhm.
And I think that shows up all the time. And being a mom and being somebody who understands on a level that people think, there's this busy schedule, there's this virtual aspect, it tends to feed into that culture as well. Those 20 somethings that relate to technology, that understand that I don't have to go into a brick or mortar to shop or to do anything, even therapy now.
Yeah.
And I think there's that also immediate gratification. But on my end, there's also that comfort for people that they get to be in their own space and environment. When you're working with couples, it shows up even more so because there's two schedules to have variables too. And I do a couple of late nights a week. I schedule between 7:30 and 10:30 at night for some people.
Wow.
And that can be really helpful to people who have families, again, with
Yeah.
the transition, right? New
Yeah.
couple, new family, new place, new situation. And all of that tends to work with
Yeah.
web-based therapy.
That's so cool. I never really thought about how you can be even more flexible with your schedule when you are doing web-based stuff for couples and for families. That's a really unique schedule that you've allowed yourself to offer your clients. That's really cool. I never really thought about that. So you could do the late nights.
It works for me too because, like I said, I'm a parent
Mhm.
and I've always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom too, along with wanting to be a therapist. And I
Yeah.
didn't think you could do it all, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that I am because I don't think anybody really is.
Right.
but I think that there's sacrifice in both areas. So while I'm the person that drops off my kids and picks them up from school every day, I also get to be the person to put them to bed at night. But I also get to schedule 8 hours in between all of that to be there
Right.
for other people and to use my skill.
That's awesome. I'm like so excited. I want to do what you're doing. I want to do it. Hey friend, want to be more comfortable while sitting on the therapy couch? I sure did, and went looking for pants and tops that were soft, wrinkle resistant, and would match just about anything I already had in my closet. And now Zaya Active makes up about 80% of my wardrobe. Would you like to learn more? Head over to my site, lisamustard.com, and click on the Activewear tab. And don't think this is just for women. They have men's and kids' clothes too, and our family is loving the quality, and I am loving the price tags. So head over to my site to check it all out. I bet you hear that a lot from other therapists, or do you do that?
I have a lot of conversation like this that
Mhm.
people want to know how you get there. How do you do this? Because I want that. And I think I end up in doing therapy with some of those people
Oh, I
because some
bet.
of it ends up being fear,
Yeah.
that's holding us back. We don't want to fail. We don't want to succeed. I think
Yeah.
there's fear in all of the directions. So
And of course, I have so many questions about, well, how do you structure your fees? How do you bill? But I do know that you are private pay. And I also know that you don't just limit yourself to therapy because you also do life coaching. So, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and how you have set that up for yourself or for your clients?
sure. I think private pay, and just to touch on that for a second, I
Mhm.
think it works with this modality also
Mhm.
because, in the way I think about things, I often don't work under the umbrella of a diagnosis, as I mentioned.
Right.
So I think with insurance, a lot of policies are you have to provide a diagnosis. People don't often want to deal with that.
Mhm.
There's also regulations that come with insurance companies as to how many sessions you can have and for how long and what that looks like. And so there's a lot of control aspects as far as insurance goes.
Mhm.
And when I explain that to some clients, they're totally comfortable and even more so not going through insurance.
Yeah.
I can do out of network. I
Mhm.
can do, HSA, FSA accounts and things like that to create discounted work.
Mhm.
But I think it makes sense for people for with what they're looking for, with how I treat and how I work to offer private pay and out of network kind of financial responsibilities. That hand in hand goes a lot with the life coaching aspects.
Mhm.
People who don't want to have a diagnosis, don't want to talk about seeing a therapist, might do some of the same work
Mhm.
with a life coach and don't understand necessarily the difference. A lot of my work initially, when people reach out to me and I ask, what service are you looking for? They ask it in return. It's more of a question of, well, what's the difference and how do I know? And
Right.
my most succinct answer to that is there isn't a lot of difference except that I'm doing therapy using my license and I'm doing life coaching without it.
Right.
I could life coach whether I had my license or not, and therapy I cannot. So ultimately, the work I do, the conversations I have don't change much.
Right. Yeah. That's what I find too when I was doing life coaching. It's a very similar conversation, very similar, techniques, very similar ways of helping people with change, but it's just different when you're saying you're a therapist and you're in your state and you're licensed and your paperwork
Mhm.
changes too, I'm guessing, right?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a lot like, talking to a lawyer friend who's giving you legal advice and they have that fine print that's like,
Yeah.
this is not legal advice,
Right.
right?
Right.
Life coaching kind of has that aspect that, I'm not doing this as a therapist when I'm talking to you, but it doesn't mean that I don't have a license. So I have to be ethically, attentive to all of those things too.
Yeah.
And if they have a need, that's really important for me to address first, which is again back to the intake process
Hmm.
to say, no, you're more, in this category where there might be a need for
Right.
more diagnostic type therapy.
Yeah, I love that. I would love to see if your interview, what that looks like and how because when I was at an agency, this agency that you have to do it like this. And then when you go to this other place, you do it like this. But when you're on your own and you can kind of like
Hmm.
make your rules for yourself and who you want to work with, you get that freedom of it's really, oh, it's so freeing. I totally get it. It's just
Hmm.
like freedom from, and I think so many therapists listening, they want to get there as well. They want to possibly get over their fears and jump into this pool and see what they can do for themselves.
Yeah.
Do you have any other suggestions or advice for somebody who's listening and they're like, Bridget, I would like to dip my toe in that pool.
My mentor told me, stop being so afraid.
Mm,
And I think that's the advice across the board is that we're, like I said, afraid to fail, but afraid to succeed, afraid to let go. You talked about freedom
mhm.
and there's that excitement that comes with the freedom, but there's also this, holy crap, I'm doing this by myself. There's no one else to shoulder some of the baggage, I guess, that comes
Yeah,
with it, or liability, or whatever word we want to call that. And I think that can be scary.
yeah,
But what she also said to me was, if you're doing the work as a therapist that you're intended to do, then you don't have to worry as much about the liability and about all of the fears because the relationship is what's important. And if you're doing a good job with that relationship, then you don't have to be afraid of the fallout of what's beyond that.
right. Ooh, she's so wise.
She is. She's
Yeah,
incredible.
she's very wise. Oh, I love that. Okay, this has just been really, really helpful. Now, I know you said that you work with Simple Practice. That's the platform that you utilize.
Hmm.
Does that have everything in there for you? So I know there's probably different tiers that you can sign up with. I don't know much about Simple Practice.
Yeah, there's different tiers you can sign up with. I've found it to be very helpful. I know that there's some free modalities that allow for virtual telehealth that's all HIPAA compliant, but it was just very easy for me because they do have templates that you
Mhm.
can work from, that you can upload your own. If you're somebody who does want to do billing or bill insurance, you can do it all through the platform. There's also, I have the layer that attaches virtual telehealth to it. So I can do the videos that are all through there. Everything is, bank encrypted, code
Yeah.
level. And then there's another option, which I really like, which is secure messaging.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like text messaging. It's a certain number of characters, but it's secure in a way that somebody can leave me a note and say, I have to cancel this session. And it could be, logistics, or it could be, hey, I want to leave this note so I remember to talk about it in our next session, or kind of a brain dump type thing. And I really like that aspect because, for one, it's secure. It's not like an email that I'm responding to all the time,
Right.
but I can also add that if I want to in the future. I haven't yet,
Mm-hmm.
as another layer of therapy to say, if you are in a struggling time, we can add this on to your service for X amount, across the board, or something along those lines for people who need that additional service.
Very cool. And people can schedule appointments through that platform with you?
Yes, very easy. They can access it through a client portal, and on a website, I can use a link to kind of embed that calendar into my website and things like that. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
very versatile.
That sounds really cool. I know there's a lot of platforms out there right now that are competing for our business. How did you decide on Simple Practice?
Psychology Today recommended it, and I've had a good experience there. I had a couple of other friends who I talked to, or in social media, Facebook groups and
Mm-hmm.
things like that have had conversations about it. It came pretty highly recommended,
Mm-hmm.
and they did offer, a 30-day trial period. So I was like, well, let's give it a shot. It worked
Right.
great for me. I haven't looked back since.
Awesome. Wow. Very cool. You're so inspiring. You're so I love this. I know that there's probably so many folks listening right now that are like, Bridget, you've just given me that push or that inspiration or motivation that I can do this too. So I'm so grateful to have had you on the show today. So if folks listening want to do therapy with you or life coaching with you, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
So the best way to reach me if you're looking for a therapist or a life coach is to call
Okay.
or to send me an email. My phone is 781-277-7273, or my email is Bridget, BRIDGET.LICSW@gmail.com. And I start the conversation there. I'm in the process. You can also do this all without a website because I'm in the process of building a website right now,
Mm-hmm.
and doing all of that. And I've been doing this for 2 years already. So I want people to know you don't need all of it up front.
Yeah.
I thought that too.
Yeah.
You needed the brick and mortar, you needed everything in place. You don't.
Right.
And so I've been doing it slowly and surely. In this new 2020 year, I hope to have my website up and running and everything, business cards attached. I've now secured my logo and my business name, and I'm going to be attaching that to all of my work. But right now it's just me. So
Okay.
reach out in the in the phone or email, and we start there.
Okay, cool. I will put all of that in the show notes so you don't have to worry about people remembering that. But I think it's really cool that you don't have a website yet, but yet you are building this incredible telehealth practice without a website. So, everybody says, "Oh, you got to have the website first. You got to have all this." But no, you're like, no. You just need to go out there and start talking to people, start, networking with your warm market, letting them know who you are and what you do, and just start.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay.
Most of us are already doing therapy and have our own practice without even knowing it. Just start
Yeah.
billing.
Yeah, right. You know what I think is probably for me, the biggest challenge is fees. And I wanted to ask you, do you, in terms of therapy versus life coaching, are they different packages? So for life coaching, I know some people they'll do a 6-week package, or do you just do it by the hour like you do with therapy?
I do it all by the hour.
You do.
I
Okay.
do 50-minute sessions or 25-minute sessions. And for
Mhm.
some couples, I'll do longer than that, especially
Okay.
for an initial session.
Gotcha.
But all my fees are the same across the board because I really, truly feel my work doesn't change enough to change the fees.
Yeah. Okay. And I get that. I totally understand that. And I think that makes complete sense to me. I mean, I get it.
Hmm.
That's probably how I would do it too, if I were to go back into this. And just a little aside on me is I keep saying 2020 is going to be the year I open my own telehealth, my own virtual practice. And I don't know, you and I were meant to connect. I mean, there's a reason you came into my life. So, this is kind of a selfish interview for me. I'm learning so much here. And I know that there's so many folks listening today that are jotting down notes, and maybe they're going to have more questions for you. Are you okay with maybe some therapists reaching out and just kind of asking a question or two? Or are you all right with that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Bridget, this has been so awesome, and I'm so grateful to have had you on the show. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine. Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content. And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.